Hello viewers, this is Gina. You will be learning the end part of the French Revolution. Today's video is the third part, that is the ending part of the French Revolution, such as the formation of convention, the directory ruling France, and the end of the French Revolution. To be easier in understanding, let's try to recap the situation and events happened in France during the later part of the 18th century, that is a few years before and during the French Revolution, which we have discussed in the previous two videos. Now, let's also try to connect these sequential events in a logistic way. We have learned that the pre-revolutionary French society was also known as the old regime, in which people were divided into three states. They are the clergy, the nobility, and the third state. This third state was comprised of more than 90% of the total population, and these people are the only who delivered all the financing activities of the state through taxes, whereas the first two states were exempted from paying taxes. At the same time, these two states enjoyed various forms of privileges by birth. Thus, the people of France felt inequality and unjust. The people of the third state especially were not happy, that is discontent with the system of the old regime, and at the same time they were inspired by many philosophers and their ideas of liberty, equality, democratic rights of the people, and division of power. These people of the third state found difficult in living due to the subsistence crisis, where their basic means of livelihood were endangered due to mass failure in crops production, leading to lack of availability of food, consequent high prices, and also low wages of the people, which is not proportionate with the high prices. Besides, France's national financial condition was not good due to its prolonged involvement in wars in other countries, for example, the American Independence War against the Great Britain, which was one of the biggest enemies of France during the time. So, these are the socio-economic and political conditions of France in the old regime. Now, let's remind ourselves the events in sequential and logistic manner. Due to economic crisis within France and the national debt due to wars, the king had to increase the taxes. For it, he had to call the States General's meeting. In that meeting, the representatives of the third state demanded casting of vote by each member in the meeting. Earlier, one vote could be casted only by one state. So, the early voting system did not proportionately represent the number of representatives or members who attended in the meeting. Remember, 300 representatives each from the first two states and 600 from the third. When the king rejected the proposal, all the members of the third state walked out and protested. Then they took the tennis court oath and declared the National Assembly. They also decided not to disperse until completing to draft a constitution. While drafting the constitution at Versailles, the rest of France was in chaotic situation with violent disturbances. For example, in Paris, the Bastille fortress, which was used as a prison, was destroyed on July 14, 1789. And this day was marked as the start of the French Revolution. It can be asked even in the exam. In the following days, peasants from the rest parts of France also revolted violently against the king and the nobles. This agrarian insurrection is called the Great Fear. Then, the Constitution of 1791 drafted by the National Assembly, made France a constitutional monarchy. The traditional system of power and authority of the king and his ministers were then diluted into three sections, that is, the judiciary, the executive, and the legislature, whereas the National Assembly acted as the legislative body. Under this constitution, members of the legislature and judges of the judiciary were elected by vote. Besides, the natural and inalienable rights of the citizens were protected by the state. However, the voting rights were only entitled to active citizens. Remember, those men of 25 years and above who paid taxes equal to the minimum of 3 days of a laborer's wage were recognized as an active citizen. The remaining men and all women of the society were passive citizens. Another point that could be noted here is that all the members in the National Assembly were educated and people from the higher middle classes of the third state. So, there was a larger section of people within the third state who were still not happy because they were left out of this political reformation and new system of governance. Thus, the revolution further moved towards greater political equality, especially voting to weaker section. During the time, various political clubs were established and people from all sections started discussing and debating the current political conditions, deliberating many philosophers' political ideologies, and even expressing their demands and issues. In the meantime, Jacobins, who were comprised of less prosperous sections of people, such as small shopkeepers, artisans, pastry cooks, watchmakers, printers, servants, and other daily wage workers, became popular and more powerful than any other clubs. Under their leaderships, the royal residents in Paris were attacked and even the king was arrested. There is one point I missed to mention in the previous video. Before this royal attack in Paris, what happened was that the King Louis XVI secretly tried to resume his powers and authority, which were limited under the constitution, by overthrowing the National Assembly with the King of Prussia. And other neighboring rulers like Austria also helped him. But before this could happen, the National Assembly declared wars against Prussia and Austria. During the war, thousands of volunteers from different parts of France joined the army forces. These volunteers sang a patriotic song, which is called the Marseillaise, which was composed by Roger de Lisle. The song was named as Marseillaise because it was sung for the first time from a place in France, which is called Marseillaise. It's a name of a place. Now this song, the Marseillaise, is the national anthem of France, just like Jana Gana of India. So, till here, we have learned in the two previous videos. Now, let's move further. The formations of the National Convention. Elections were again held amidst the wave of violence in which Parisian insurrectionists, that is, those revolutionists in Paris, massacred hundreds of accused counter-revolutionaries or those who were against the revolution. This time, all men of 21 years and above, regardless of wealth, got the right to vote. Thus, the existing National Assembly was replaced by the newly elected one called the National Convention, or simply the Convention. Further, this convention strongly proclaimed the abolition of the monarchy and establishment of the French Republic. The official declaration of the French Republic was on the 21st September 1792. So here, what is republic? It is a form of government whose head of the state is not a monarch but an elected representative or representatives of people. Later, Louis XVI was sentenced to death on the charge of treason and crimes against the state. On the 21st January 1793, he was executed publicly at the Place de la Concorde. The picture shown here is how the king met the said fate. His wife, Queen Marie Antoinette, also met the same fate after 9 months. Then, it is followed by the Reign of Terror. The period from 1793 to 1794 is referred as the Reign of Terror. Wars with other European powers and intense division within the Convention saw the French Revolution into its most violent and disruptive phase. Maximilien Robespierre was the head of the Convention government. He followed a policy of severe control and punishment against suspected enemies of the Republic or the Revolution. The suspected enemies included ex-nobles, clergy, members of other political parties, and even members within his own party who were disagree with his methods. Most of them were arrested, imprisoned, and then put on trial by a revolutionary tribunal. Here, a tribunal is a court, consists of one or more judges to conduct judicial business. If the court found them guilty, they were guillotined. What is a guillotine? It is a device of execution that consists of a weighted blade between two vertical poles. It is used for beheading people as punishment, and this device is named after Dr. Guillotine, who invented it. Now, the changes brought in society by Robespierre, who were the leader or the head of the convention. During this Robespierre's government, laws were made with an objective to bring equality among people, but implemented by using strict control and severe methods. He introduced the law of forced selling by making a maximum selling prices or wages, that is, fixing the upper limit on wages and prices. So, peasants were forced to transport their grain to the cities and sell it at the prices fixed by the government. Similarly, he also introduced another law for equality of food. Under it, meat and bread were rationed, but people were forbidden to use or eat more expensive white flour, which was usually consumed by rich people. According to this law, all should eat the same bread, which was termed as equality bread by the government. The loaves of the bread was basically made of whole wheat. Instead of traditional monsieur, which was used as a French courtesy title like sir in English and madam, that is madam in English, all French men and women from that time addressed as citoyen or citoyenne, that means citizen. Besides, churches were shut down and their buildings were converted into barracks and offices. Barrack means a building which is mainly used for housing of military personnel. Later, the French people and even supporters of Robespierre began to demand moderation and revolted against his cruel governance and extreme policies, which we call it the Reign of Terror. At the end, he was convicted, that is, found guilty by a court in July 1794, then arrested, and on the following day, he was sent to the guillotine, that is the same fate met by Louis XVI, that is the king. Then, a Directory rules France. As the head of the state could not be empty, the folds of the Jacobin government allowed another group of the society, that is the wealthier middle-class people who had survived the Reign of Terror, to seize power and approve a new constitution. This new constitution again denied vote to non-propertied sections of the society. It also created France, for the first time, bicameral legislature, that is, functioning of two elected legislative councils. Like the previous procedure under the Constitution of 1791, that is, that of the National Assembly, all the members of the two legislative councils were elected through vote. In turn, these two elected legislative councils, that is, all the members of the two, again appointed a Directory, which is an executive body made up of 5 members. This Directory was the body that directly administered the law. The main reason for keeping 5 members in the Directory was to avoid the concentration of power in one-man executive, as during the convention under Robespierre. It was a lesson learned from the previous form of government, that is the Reign of Terror. However, this form of government, that is the Directory, could not do away with loopholes like the National Assembly or the Convention. There were frequent conflicts between the Director and the legislative councils, or even between the two councils. Thus, the Directory's 4 years in power were again riddled with financial crisis, popular discontent, inefficiency, political corruption, and clashes among the opposition. Lastly, the end of the French Revolution as the rise of the Napoleonic era. By the late 1790s, the members of the Directory relied almost entirely on the military to maintain their authority and had ceded much of their power to the army officials in the field. This political instability and weakness of the Directory led to the rise of a military dictator, Napoleon Bonaparte, who staged a coup d'etat. A coup d'etat means a sudden and decisive change of government illegally or by force. This event, that is takeover the power by the military coup, marked as the end of the French Revolution and the beginning of the Napoleonic era, in which France would come to defeat many neighboring rulers and conquer much of the continental Europe. In 1804, Napoleon Bonaparte crowned himself the Emperor of France. Then Napoleon again reintroduced many laws, such as to protect private property and impose a uniform system of weight and measures provided by the decimal system. Earlier, what the system was that there was no standard or universal unit of weighting system. For example, if a person used a random stone as a 1 kilogram stone while selling his goods, it would definitely be different from another person who also used a stone for the same purpose. So, Napoleon introduced a uniform system of weighting. Similarly, there was no system of measuring with decimals like 1.5 kgs or 2.75 and so on. So a buyer or a seller had to lose some amounts. For example, if 1.5 kgs of apple was sold as only 1 kg, or 2.75 kgs of potato is sold as 3 kgs. Thus, there were lots of exploitations among people due to these weights and decimal systems. So initially, many people appreciated Napoleon, and he was considered as a liberator by defeating many traditional rulers in neighboring states, and he was also considered as a modernizer of Europe due to his introduction of this weighting and decimal system. But later it was changed, and he was finally defeated at Waterloo in 1815, which is another topic. Through all these changes in the form of government and ups and downs in the socio-political spheres, the ideals of liberty, equality, democratic rights of the people, and division of powers were the main inspiring ideals of the revolution. It motivated various political movements in France and the rest of the continental Europe during the following century. Thus, the French Revolution remained as an inspiration among people. Tipu Sultan and Rajaram Mohan Roy are two prominent Indians who were also inspired and responded to the ideas coming from the French Revolution. So, this all are about the French Revolution, how it started and why, the height of the revolution, what were the changes and the results it brought in the political structure of the country. In the next video, we will be discussing about the social reforms and the overall impact of the revolution, resulting the abolition of censorship, the abolition of slavery, and its impact on women in France. I hope you like my video. You can leave any query or comment or suggestion in the comment boxes. If you find it useful, please share, subscribe, and like my channel, and keep on watching. Thank you.